I've been pretty ebullient about the prospects of the former and I think future president. It makes Hugh nervous, actually, that I am as optimistic as I am. And let me get you to where I am and where I was a year ago, so you understand the perspective that I'm bringing it to you this morning. A year ago, when Donald Trump was in the primary process in a very contested field of very talented Republican candidates, Nikki Haley was in the mix. And you had, Ron DeSantis was in the mix. There was lots of people on that stage. Chris Christie was in there. The entire array of all aspects of the Republican Party were represented. And the concern a lot of people had about Donald Trump a year ago, going into the fall and winter season, leading to the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire first in the primary, was that Donald Trump's negatives that he had against him in 2020 were so vast and so big and so insurmountable that it would be really hard, if he were to get the nomination, to be able to pull off a win in November. And I was one of those people that was that concerned. Well, a funny thing happened. I said on the air, I said in the Huniverse, Huniverse.com, where I did an after show for about 15 years, I would tell subscribers to that site that barring absolute, convincing, persuasive data in polling that show that Donald Trump could overcome those negatives, I would support him. I would do everything I could, but in my heart of hearts, I wouldn't think he would be able to pull it off. And as the months ticked by and as Joe Biden continued to demonstrate he is just not mentally fit for the job anymore, and he made that very much apparent during the debate with Donald Trump, and the Democrats kicked him to the curb, replaced him with Kamala Harris, who is even worse in her own way as being unfit for the office. I started to see more and more data come out and started to think, yeah, he actually's got a path. He can pull this off. And week by week, month by month, poll by poll, not any one poll, but all of them started to show data that this is not just a possibility, but it's getting to be, very likely. Now that we're 11 days out, here is the biggest metric I have to give you to take away. The favorability index, the popularity of the candidates. In 2020, Donald Trump had the economic shutdown, the COVID, and lockdown debacle. There was lots of things that happened during that last year of his term, which was otherwise a very successful term. But the personal antics on Twitter, the shtick, it just got old, and Donald Trump was very unpopular going into the election cycle in 2020. How unpopular? Well, compared to Joe Biden, if you take Donald Trump's approval number, subtracting his disapproval, whatever that net is, and compare that to Joe Biden's metrics in 2020, and Donald Trump had a 17.4% deficit in likability, in approval to Joe Biden. That's hard to overcome. Now, Donald Trump generated 74.3 something million votes for him in 2020. But he also generated 81 million votes against him, largely because of that unfavorability index. Virtually nobody in 2020 voted for Joe Biden because of Joe Biden. They voted for Joe Biden because he wasn't Donald Trump. And so now flash forward to 2024. That index had been, Donald Trump was still upside down compared to Kamala Harris, but by nowhere near the same ratio, nowhere near the same percentage. And that number has been falling over the last few weeks. Now, lots of prediction down the stretch was that Kamala Harris, after her 10 days, 2 weeks of horrific media appearances, including the interview with Bret Baier and The View, and most recently the town hall on CNN, all these things would start to keep ticking away at her lead over Donald Trump in the Real Clear Politics average. And it has been ticking down. It now stands at like 0.3% or something like that, a statistical anomaly. But where her free fall has been is in approval, job approval, favorability. She is now, according to the Wall Street Journal this week, upside down by 12 points. And Donald Trump, in that same Wall Street Journal poll this week, he's up 4. That's a 16-point spread. And when you compare that to the 17 points and change that he was down to Joe Biden, that's a 33-point swing in favorability from 4 years ago to today. The anti-Trump sentiment is just not out there in the same intensity as it once was. Oh, there's still people that are going to vote for Kamala Harris because she's not Donald Trump. There's plenty of never-Trumpers out there. But they are not in the same numbers. They just aren't. And for all this talk about Donald Trump being, I'll never vote for the guy. I don't like him. I can't do it. Won't do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Here's a thing that happened just last night on News Nation Now. J.D. Vance, the vice presidential nominee for the Republicans, was the subject of a town hall with Chris Cuomo on News Nation Now. And he got a little philosophical about the election cycle and the heated rhetoric, which is way overkill right now. I mean, the Trump is Hitler, everything is Hitler. This is the end of the Republic as we know it. If X happens or Y wins, everything is just, dialed up to 11 on the intensity scale. And J.D. Vance is being the voice of calm. Here is what he said last night, cut number 30, Harley.
To me, the biggest threat to democracy is the rising tide of censorship. The idea that we should be trying to silence our fellow Americans rather than persuade them and talk to them. That's always going to lead to people being pissed off because they don't like to be told what to think or what to say. They like to talk to one another. And that's one thing that I'll always commit to. As you're vice president for the next 4 years, I'll always try to talk to people. We'll go out there and we'll do events with people who disagree with us. We'll answer questions from people who don't always see eye to eye. But I think if we set the tone at the top, the leadership of this country is all about communicating with one another. I think that's how we start to heal the divide, but we all have a role in it. And one final point I'll say about this, and, don't get too personal all the time, but, one of the things I've seen, especially from, some of my wife's friends and some of my friends, is that they disagree with us on politics sometimes. They'll get very personal about it. And if you're discarding a lifelong friendship because somebody votes for the other team, then you've made a terrible, terrible mistake and you should do something different. Like, don't cast aside. Like, most of my family obviously is going to vote for, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And if they're not, actually, I need to talk to them. But I've got friends who like me personally, acquaintances who aren't necessarily going to vote for me. That doesn't make them bad people. And we can't, this is my most important advice, whether you vote for me, whether you vote for Donald Trump, whether you vote for Kamala Harris, don't cast aside family members and lifelong friendships. Politics is not worth it. And I think if we follow that principle, we'll heal the divide in this country. Thank you, man.
I can't begin to tell you how much of a home run that answer is. And it's genuine. And it's everything that you want to hear out of a candidate for high office in this country. I mean, go to the mattresses over issues, you betcha. But it's not worth losing your family over. It's not worth going to civil war over. And J.D. Vance struck a tone, even with people like Frank Luntz, who holds focus groups all the time with independents watching these kinds of things. His focus group, here's what Frank Luntz said on X just a couple of hours ago. It's words like this, and he cited the clip I just played for you. It's words like this that have made quite a few undecided voters in my focus group say, I don't like Trump at all, but I am going to cast my vote for J.D. Vance. Because of the four, he's the most positive. Be energetic, be enthusiastic, be intense if you need to, but stay positive and you'll win more people over. Dwayne Patterson for Hugh. A ton more to get to. Stick around. for this edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.